Good evening and welcome to the July 11th, 2024 Oregon City Commission special meeting. We will now convene the meeting and will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell is absent. Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. So believe it or not, I can actually see a flag from where I am. So if you would stand and join me in the flag salute, it'd be much appreciated. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. So tonight on our agenda, we have one proclamation. And I will go ahead and read that. So it's a proclamation regarding Juneteenth Day in Oregon City. So whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in the Confederacy territory free, paving the way for passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwest United States. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words of June and 19th, and has been celebrated for over 150 years. And whereas Juneteenth-centered activities have taken place to promote and cultivate knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture, and whereas Juneteenth is a day of reflection and a day of renewal, it is a moment in time to appreciate not only the African American experience, but is inclusive of all races, ethnicities, and nationalities. And whereas Juneteenth is a day that we can come together as a community to listen, to learn, to refresh the drive to achieve, it is a day where we can come one step closer to better utilizing the energy wasted on racism. And whereas the annual Juneteenth celebration in the city of Oregon City will be held on Saturday, June 15th at 2 p.m. at Library Park, now I therefore, Denise C. McGriff, Mayor of the city of Oregon City, do proclaim June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth Day in Oregon City and urge all citizens to be aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and the heritage of our nation and city. And I will sign it on the 5th day of June, 2024. So our program, as stated in the resolution, is on 2 p.m. at Library Park. There will also be a discussion at the Pioneer Community Center, a panel discussion regarding the book that was written by Sarah Sanderson, where we will be talking about the impact of the exclusion law on the city of Oregon City. So I hope everyone will be able to come out, and I want to thank the library staff and many other citizens who've been working together on this for over the last year. So next on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda and review of the agenda. Oh, excuse me, citizen comments. Do we have anybody, Mr. Evan and Mr. Wiley? Anybody
Yes,
signed up for citizen comments?
Yes, we do have Mr. William Gifford.
Okay, Mr. Gifford, would you come forward, please? I can see the top of your head.
I can't control
Well, that's why I knew it was him.
Good evening, Commission. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. I have two kudos that I want to make citizen comments. One is the Rose Parade float and effort. I want to thank everybody that was involved in that, everybody that participated in that, even our own Dr. John McLaughlin. Doug Neely did a really fine job, and Rocky and the mayor, and my wife Joyce and I think there were 12 of us that were marching along, and it was really well done. There were positions along the parade route where they made announcements about Oregon City and sort of a very touristy type of thing, but it was very well done. The second was totally unrelated, but it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and that is very technical and local, but I don't know who to praise, but I had put in a couple of times, had to put in a complaint about a crosswalk closed sign that had been run over a few times or spun around, and that was at the corner of Hilltop and Warner Milne by the Wendy's, between the Wendy's and the bank there. And it just kept getting run into, and there were all sorts of discussions as to whether they should move it, what to do about that. And some genius came up with the idea of putting reflective tape on the side of that sign that people could see it, because otherwise they're coming at an angle and it's... Anyway, I thought it was really brilliantly done, and there have been no incidences of that sign being hit since then. Just such a simple solution, and I just want to extend a thank you to whoever came up with that idea. That's all. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. Yeah. And thank you for your collaboration on the flag idea for the float.
Oh, yeah.
All right, anybody else? Okay, then we'll go on to item number 5. We have 2 presentations this evening. The first one will be with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council Annual Report. And I suspect Tom is there in the audience. And come on up, Tom. And is Mr. Neely going to come with you, or Marcia is? Marcia's going to be there for this.
He could. I also have our chair of our board, Chedimir Jessic, here tonight. So,
okay.
Good evening, Mayor McGriff and commissioners. Thank you very much for having me back again for another presentation. I am Tom Gaskill, and I'm the executive director still of the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. Tonight, I would like to really reflect on the accomplishments that we have made in the 22-23 year, but kind of bring you right up to present here. And we shouldn't take too long to do this. There we go. Not sure what the big block in the middle is, but we'll ignore that for now. All right. So this evening I'm going to highlight 5 different projects for you, not in great depth, but really want to talk to you a little bit about how far our council has come and when we started. Because it's a special year this year, and I wore this shirt on purpose, and I see that Director Neely has worn his as well. This is our logo, if you can see that, and it features the lamprey, and we'll come back to that later on. You'll see it up on the screen repeatedly, but our Watershed Council is 20 years old this year, and that's pretty significant in particular for the fact that 3 of the founding members of our Watershed Council are still on the board of directors, so these are committed folks. Our council consists of 6 directors. Chedimir Jessic is our chair and president. Marcia Sinclair, who couldn't be here tonight but may be joining us via Zoom, is our vice chair. Allison Heimowitz, who is one of the founding members of the council, is our treasurer. Danielle Folliard is our secretary. Doug Neely is a member at large and one of the founders, and Sarah Miller is another director and founder of the council. And then we also have 2 members of the council that represent, one that represents the city, Marcos Kubo, who works for Public Works and has been faithful in coming to our meetings even when the weather is decent, and Jay Wilson from Clackamas County Disaster Management as well. So I really want to acknowledge their volunteer participation in this work. It's important. Next slide, please. Oh, we're having some trouble with the slides. I can pitch here. So we have the projects that I'm highlighting this evening. In fact, I can work from my phone on this a little bit. The projects that I'm highlighting this evening represent a number of different community organizations and also state and federal partners. And so, perfect. So we'll talk a little bit, sorry, could you go back now that we're up? So the Holcomb Creek Large Wood Restoration, the Abernathy Shade Project, Echo Valley Riparian Restoration, the Watershed Community Enhancement Program, and Upper Abernathy Creek Restoration. So I miscounted, there are 5. Next slide, please. Oh, great. All right. Let's see. There we go. On it. All right. So our vision. Watershed councils are unique in that they are citizen-based, community-based organizations that evolved back in the 90s, really through the efforts of Governor at the time, Governor Kitzhaber. And they developed to solve a challenge that was primarily focused around salmon and the loss of salmon in particularly the West Coast fisheries. But they've become so much more than that. And our council was established in 2004, and the vision here, where a watershed, an area of land where water drains to one common place and where healthy streams support abundant native fish and other species, and that includes us as human beings, but also a wide diversity of other organisms. And our council has been working on that vision now for 20 years. Where we work and what we do is important. Why are we the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council? We really have three different areas that we work in. So the Abernathy Creek Basin drains down below Willamette Falls, and it's between the Clackamas River and the base of Willamette Falls. It's about half the area that we work in. Beavercreek is the other area where we focus, large landscape where we focus. And we'll be doing more of that because of our strategic planning effort in the next few years. We'll be focusing more in that area. But then also the small drainages that you're probably most familiar with live and traverse every day here in Oregon City, both above and below Willamette Falls. What do we do there? Habitat restoration is a priority. That can be in-stream work, it can be along the shoreline of these creeks, or it can be further up in the watershed. We also remove invasives. So we have a lot of invasive species that can dominate and overcome the native landscape. So we work on that kind of stuff. Technical assistance is important. If we can't provide it directly, we provide it through the publications that we develop. And we also work with many different partners who also offer technical assistance, and we become a conduit for property owners. Education and outreach, we've got a leg up now. We have a half-time position in Kira Smith that is shared with the North Clackamas Watershed Council. So half of her time is with us, half of her time is with the North Clackamas Watersheds Council. That's a new development since you last saw me. And part of Kira's work is also in the world of engagement. Really need to drop the word stakeholder out of there. Stakeholder is kind of an old term that is really not defining the landscape that we live in, where people have inhabited this place for over 15,000 years. And so we know that engagement is the kind of work that we do, but it's really working with the individual property owners and the people who inhabit the watershed to find out what help they need and how we can work on it. So what does that look like in terms of projects? And I'm going to switch back here so that I make sure I'm observant of your time. We completed a project I'm very proud of in Holcomb Creek with a private property owner. This is the first project that the council recently has done where we've restored, but we've led the way. We used Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board funding and a number of other funding sources to put together $158,000 to do this work with a contractor who lives and works in Oregon City. And we were able to put large wood in the streams to create habitat for native fish, so coho and steelhead trout, and also Pacific lamprey. This project was also a partnership with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who came in at the end and really helped to make the project whole. All right. The Abernathy Shade Project is one that is very important, hopefully, to you here at the city because you're a partner with us on it. And so you contribute, and we identify local landowners along the creeks in the watershed who want to restore the riparian habitat or the forested edges. These are areas where much of the canopy has come down due to logging practices or other land use practices, and the shoreline is exposed to radiation, solar radiation, and it heats up the waters. And so what we're trying to do is restore that native vegetation, restore that canopy, and cool the waters. So we work closely with Marcos Kubo on this. We've had some good progress there on several different sites. Similar work, but a different funding source. Here we're working, just finished up with 3 property owners in kind of lower end of Abernathy Creek on habitat restoration. We partnered here with Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation District, so they're a very important player for us in the watershed. And we've just restored about 5 acres of habitat there. Plants are young, they will grow, it takes time. So we're getting there. Here's another situation where we work closely with the city. So we've had a couple of community enhancement grants. We're in an application phase for another one, hoping to work with the City Parks and Recreation Department at Singer Creek Park and also Abernathy Creek Park. Here we've also done riparian restoration work, but we've had a strong dose of community involvement. So volunteers come out and help us to remove invasives and to plant natives. And we're making progress on this. We're hoping to put some interpretive signage in place at these sites to tell people about the great work that we've been doing. And finally, this project, the Upper Abernathy Creek Restoration, is comprised of 3 different property owners. And I failed to mention earlier the Clackamas Partnership, which is a collective of 4 different watershed councils and a number of partners, including Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, and Metro. And also WES is a partner on that, and several other organizations, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. But that partnership helped us to put together a 10-project federal grant worth $3.8 million. And that is through, it is hosted through the Johnson Creek Watershed Council. However, our share of that will fund 3 of these projects for $692,000, a little bit more. We are working with Port Blakely in the upper reaches of the watershed, and also another private property owner, and I just visited that site last week. It's very exciting work, so look for more reporting on that next year if I get to present to you again. Finally, what does our structure look like? So much of our revenue, as I mentioned before, is coming from federal or state funds. In this year, we have a lot more federal funds coming into the picture, but typically the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board is our primary funding source, and that is both for the Clackamas Partnership and for other grants that we might get. The City of Oregon City contributes, and then we also take private donations, and we sell t-shirts. So 25 bucks gets you one of these. I've got about 48 left, so you might hurry. And then on the expense side, I am the primary expense for this Watershed Council, and then some of Kira's time. We do have an office at the corner of Washington and Abernathy Creek Road in the Kruger House, 2nd floor. Come on down and see me anytime. And finally, I just wanted to share a few of the players that are in the watershed. So down in the lower left corner, you see a sneak peek of a beaver, and that beaver's handiwork is behind. That is a dam on Holcomb Creek. That beaver was captured with a night, one of these wildlife cameras, and so we've seen him busily working there. But we also have lots of human players. And then if you could, Jacob, please play that video clip for a second here, and I'll narrate over it. So this is a remarkable view of our logo creature, the Pacific lamprey. Pacific lamprey have been on Earth for 450 million years. These fish are amazing. They don't look like the average fish that we might think about, and they don't act like it either. This was video taken in Holcomb Creek in one of our project sites post-restoration, and there they are building a nest or a redd in order to lay their eggs, and eventually their young will come up out of the gravel. They spend between 4 and 6 years in that creek before they out-migrate to the ocean, grow to the size of these adults, and then come back. They are anadromous, just like our salmon and steelhead, and really an amazing creature, very important also to the native peoples of this area. So I'll leave you with that, and if you have any questions, and we don't have time for it tonight, you can always look me up on the web. I look forward to talking with you. Thank you.
Are there any questions, gentlemen? Great presentation, as usual.
Thank you, Denise.
All right. Do you want to say anything? Marcia, do you want to say anything?
Thanks for the opportunity. I am really excited to be part of this Watershed Council, and part of it is that I love the model of Watershed Councils, where it's citizen volunteers, they have a lot of different interests, they come together and they work collaboratively to solve some of our environmental concerns and promote stewardship in watersheds. And I just think it's a great model. It started a while back. We weren't sure if it was going to last. Well, it has. And 20 years later, this little Watershed Council is still working away in our watersheds and doing some great work. So I'm very excited to be a part of it. And I want to thank you all for an audience. And we love being able to share our projects.
Mr. Board Chair, I'm not going to let you get away without saying anything.
I want to first thank the city being partner, especially like providing some funding in restoring part of those banks and planting trees. And we look forward to continue working with the city and trying to make this watershed a better place for all of us.
Great. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And we're always looking for new members. So let your friends and countrymen know.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you. All right. So 5B, we have a project update on the Pavement Maintenance Utility Fund, one of my favorite topics. Is that someone from Public Works?
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. My name is Josh Wheeler. I'm the Assistant City Engineer for Public Works. And tonight with me, I've got Gabe Kropp of the consulting firm Consor. The PMUF, or Pavement Maintenance Utility Fund, is one that we have had for since 2008. And we haven't been before you for quite a while to give you an update of the program, of where we're at and where we're going. So I'm going to turn this over to Gabe, and he's going to give that presentation. And we'll be here for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
I think I've got some tough work cut out for me going after the Watershed Council. They have some pretty nice photos. I don't have quite the same presentation, but hopefully it'll still be pretty interesting for you.
No lamprey on the pavement, though.
No. All right.
Just say your name for the record, even though Josh said it.
Sure. So Gabe Kropp, again, I'm with Consor, and we're a consulting engineering firm that has been helping the city since 2012 with the paving program through different roles, working with Josh and other city staff. So as Josh said, I'm here on behalf of the city to give a bit of an update and report on how we've been working together on the pavement plan. And first I wanted to start with a bit of a history just for context. So what really started us representing here today was the transportation utility fee, which was established back in 2008. And we actually started working, I started working even back in 2012 on the city's first pavement maintenance plan. And we've been working with city staff since that time to do some regular updates to the plan. Those updates happening in 2015 and 19, and then this year as well. So we've done a number of them, and here to present a little bit more on what was included. So just a little bit more background, some interesting statistics about what we've been doing, what the city has been doing with the PMUF. So since 2008, when the fee was established, been able to pave 25.7 lane miles is what we've been able to count through all the different projects that have happened. A number that's hard to comprehend, but 2.15 million square yards of slurry seal. So a lot of area done there. And overall, 27.5 million in PMUF funds invested. So that's a pretty notable number, significant investment made by the city since that time. And as a result of all of that work, we've been able to greatly improve the street condition. So there's a pavement condition index rating, 0 to 100 is the scale that we typically use to kind of grade how the pavement is in town. And so back in 2011, when we really started doing projects using PMUF funds, it was at about a 60. And we're all the way up at a 76 as of 2022. And actually, I think that's a 77 as of 2023 for the most recent inspections that were done. So some really good work and a real success story that we wanted to celebrate here today and also explain how we're going to try to continue that. So again, no nice pictures, but hopefully some graphics that I can explain in terms of some maps showing what's happening in the city. So these are a little bit difficult to see, but I'll try to explain what they're intended for. The graphic on the left is a color coding of every city street showing the relative condition as it stands today. So green generally means good, red, orange generally means more in need of repair, so poor condition streets. So you can tell a vast majority of the streets are in pretty good condition, but there's definitely still some left, particularly in the older McLaughlin area neighborhoods that we still know we need to address. On the right is another graphic. This is showing in gray all of the streets the city has touched in one way or another, either through rehabilitation or preventative maintenance treatments since project started back in 2011. So you can tell that a majority of the streets have been touched one way or another. The ones that haven't, as you might expect, are the red ones that still need some attention. And then in the middle, there's a bit of a table there kind of summarizing the progression of the pavement condition as the years went by. So there's been some ups and downs, but overall you can see how we've gotten from a 60 all the way to a 76. So again, pretty notable improvements over that time period. As we think about how this correlates to other communities that we have worked for as well, this is significant. I'm not sure I've seen this big of a change in most other communities. So again, something that the city should be proud of. So as we transition to why redo a plan, I always like to show this as a graphic, kind of explaining the philosophy of what we do with pavement management. What we want to try to get to is an average condition that is high and stays high because it's cheaper to be able to maintain it once it's high. You can see the philosophy there is once you get down to about 75% of a pavement's life, if you're able to apply a treatment to it, or even before then, it's a lot more cost effective to keep it at a high level. If you wait until it gets to be a poor condition, it costs exponentially more money to be able to bring it back up again. And so we want to achieve a certain number, pavement condition index number, and we'd like to keep it there because it's the best use of the city's dollars to do so. And so as we think about pavement management planning and what we do and what we have worked on with Josh and staff, there's a number of things that we try to accomplish. First thing when we go into it, we try to document and apply lessons learned. So that means what did we pave the last few years? What did we plan for at the last iteration? And did we hit the mark, or are there things that we should adjust in this next plan? We want to always develop our funding projections. That's essential. We need to know how much money we have or we think is coming in to be able to predict what streets we can pave. We want to look at the types of treatments that we're applying. Are we still doing the same thing as we've done over the last few years, or there are some different things that we think are better use of the city's dollars? A really big one in the planning process is coordinating with other projects. So there's always work going on in the city, whether it's developments, whether it's utility work, and that utility work can be lots of different types: sewer, water, storm. We want to make sure that we're being good stewards of the city's dollars by coordinating those projects. There's also, as you know, a pavement cut standard, a pavement moratorium, and so we want to make sure we're not risking cutting into a street. So also, the end goal is to develop a project list. So when we go through the process, we want to have a list that we can use for the next 5 years for staff to be able to plan their annual projects. And also do what we're doing here today, serve as a tool to be able to talk with you all and the general public so they know what's coming. So specifically for this plan, we did look at our past work. We put an early emphasis on cost analysis. So one of the things we experienced a few years ago is a really significant effect of inflation. So that did have an impact on what could get paved over the last several years. And we wanted to make sure we were using the latest cost information to project what we think was realistic to achieve over the next 5 years. We engaged in developing what we call our rehabilitation list first. So that would be all of the overlays, the grind and inlays, the reconstruction. That soaks up about 80% of the budget for the PMUF dollars. So we always start with that because that will drive everything else that we do. And so we engaged with Josh and staff in a number of different workshops and there was a number of different factors that went into balancing what was most cost effective with what was required really for the city and what was the best application of those dollars. Once we had that rehab list developed, then we focused on the other 20%, which was typically preventative maintenance treatments, what we would call slurry seals, crack sealing, more surface treatment type applications. And then in the end, we have a document and a working list. So here's a snapshot by the numbers of what we anticipate the PMUF dollars, how they will be used. So you can see the biggest chunk going towards the pavement rehab there in the first column. There's some dollars that are necessary for engineering and construction management, and then the preventative maintenance, and you can see the total there, somewhere between 13, 14 million projected to be spent over the next 5 years. Sorry again for the small maps here, but what I will describe is on the left, this is our current planned rehabilitation map for the next 5 years. I wouldn't call it 100%, it's 95% complete at this point. Now there will always be factors that influence what streets actually get paved over the next 5 years because there's things outside the control right now, again, other projects that are happening, but generally speaking, this is the plan. And then on the right is the list of streets for preventative maintenance. So you can see there's a lot more you can cover in terms of area on those slurry seals and crack seals than you can with paving. So another reason why we want to try to get up to a high condition and we can continue with those applications, better bang for the buck on the dollar. And so for the future, what we're projecting if we follow through with the plan is that it's possible the PCI could actually decrease a bit by a few points, potentially down to 74, even with the current funding. Now, part of that could be inflation. We can't get quite as much as we wanted to. The other thing I'll acknowledge is that we use a program called Street Saver for managing the pavements, and that is a projection tool as well. It comes up with scenarios on what it thinks will happen based on typical degradation of streets. We found it to be a little bit on the conservative side, but in general, it's either, I would say that it's most likely the condition will stay the same or maybe slightly decrease based on the funding. And along with that, what we call deferred maintenance, meaning the streets that, the backlog of needs basically will increase by a commensurate amount as well. Thing to note though, without the PMUF around it all, it'd be a lot worse. Potentially a decrease by down to 68 if we didn't spend any money over the next 5 years on the streets. So kind of reeling things back if that wasn't in place. So PMUF basically wanted to reiterate how essential of a tool it is to maintain what we have and continue to improve the streets that we can. So I think with that, that's the bulk of the presentation, and happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Gentlemen, are there any questions?
No.
No? Okay. I did have one, Gabe. So if 76 is a really good score, what is the goal to try to get to? I don't know what the highest score is.
Yeah, so the highest score is 100. That would be a newly paved street. And as great as
Okay.
that is, we know it's not practical to have a newly paved street at all times in the city, right? From a maintenance perspective, the goal typically is around in the mid-80s, probably for a score. If you can keep your streets typically around that level, that's about when you can still apply your most cost-effective treatments to it. So that's generally the goal of the pavement management process.
Sounds great.
Just real quick, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You already got to one of my questions about our assuming that the PCI is going to decrease if we keep funding studies. So thank you for that. What comes next for us? Is there something that we're going to approve or ratify, or is this just moving forward at the staff level and we won't see it for a while?
And this is just an update presentation. There are no documents to approve or ratify. We do this plan every 5 years. We place it on our website for the public to see, and we'll announce that through things like newsletters and things. You all can look at it when it's published. It'll be published in the next 4 to 8 weeks on the website. But that's about it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, this was just informational, giving us an update. All right, thank you, gentlemen. That was really well done and informative.
You'll occasionally see the contracts that come out yearly for the different type of work being done. So you'll see a slurry seal contract or some type of a street maintenance contract that's usually associated with these implementation of this plan.
Yeah, I just didn't know if Mr. Lewis, before his departure, wanted to get in a rate increase before he was heading out. So I just wanted to double check on that.
Don't give them any
That way we'd have
ideas.
somebody to blame, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, come on, you guys. All right, so next on our agenda, we have the adoption of the agenda. And if you received the amended one, we are adding a new 7A, which is Resolution 24-20, temporary exemption for construction activities, paving on from Maplelane to Highway 213 on Beavercreek Road. We're adding that as 7A, and the rest of the numbers will move down. Is there any questions or concerns about the consent agenda, or do we have a motion to adopt?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as is. Second.
I'll second. Second by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, please. Whenever you're ready,
Commissioner
Mr.
Smith?
Lee.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Marl?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell is absent. Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
And Mayor McGriff?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. So item 8 is public hearings. We don't have any public hearings on the agenda tonight. So we'll move on to item 9, which is general business. And we have 9A, McLaughlin Promenade encroachments. Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. So tonight before you is the initial presentation concerning the encroachments and options to address those in the McLaughlin Promenade. The Commission's well aware that over the last several years, we've been working towards identifying and designating our parks as charter parks through ordinance. This is one of the last properties we're looking at because of the location and the encroachments that exist in it. So the initial work began with surveying the entire boundary of that so that boundary survey could be adopted as part of the charter amendment. Through that boundary process was the identification of where we had encroachments and what types they were, whether they were buildings, foundations, existing landscaped areas that are developed with seating or patios, other more minor things like, fire pits, chairs that were out in the public in the park itself, as well as addressing, we have easements that go through there for utilities for like Portland General Electric, or working with ODOT on the rockfall protection that protects 99E. So really trying to unwind what the existing condition is today. and how to identify what the existing condition is, and work to allow that so that through some mechanism that then would allow a charter park designation to be placed. As you're well aware, the charter park has significant limitations on selling land, leasing land, how that land is used once it's designated a charter park. So really this was an exercise or an attempt to acknowledge what exists in a way that allows that to continue while also allowing the city to adopt and complete the charter park program that we're trying to complete. As part of doing this was what would be the mechanism? What would be the mechanism to acknowledge what's there, right? And then part of that is to say, okay, as of if this is adopted and approved and these agreements are signed, it gives us a baseline to say, okay, this is something new that's expanded or encroached in the park, and we can deal with that differently than the ones that are existing today. As part of this, the least risk to the city would be get everything off of the public park, right? Remove it. No liability, no issues, no encroachment, it's clean. I think we all realize that over the decades, there's been a lot that's happened there, right? Some of it, I don't even know the history of. I'm not sure if anyone does know the history of why certain buildings were placed where they were, how certain encroachments occurred. We just know if we look back at maps or our aerials back to 2000, 2001, you can see that they were already there, right? So it obviously predates that. And so really this was the attempt to have the discussion, present what a license agreement would look like. So essentially not giving a property interest in public property for private benefit for the encroachment that exists, but a way to acknowledge and document that it is there, and essentially with the commission's approval, acknowledging it and allowing it in its form. We've received some comments, and part of this is then reaching out to each property because they're all unique in the type and extent of encroachment that exists. There are also examples of things that we'd be asking to have removed. Storage of trailers, right? You really don't think that's appropriate in a public park. And so it's really trying to look at these on a case-by-case basis and being reasonable about what the existing condition is, right? You're not going to move a building. Not asking you to, right? If you'd like to, that's fine, right? But we're not asking that at this point. And then, we did receive some emails, some comments about requesting more time. I certainly don't have a problem with that. The next step in this is once the commission, if you agree with essentially the form of it, we're going to have to go have those discussions on a property owner by property owner basis. There was a good point brought up by Mr. Nacita concerning the liability. So typically, let's say you do an event in a park, right? You go and you get a liability waiver insurance, for the weekend, 2 day, 1 day, 3 day, whatever it is, right? We believe that that's probably part of your homeowner policy as to what would happen if you have developed essentially a front yard in a public park. What happens, who's liable if something goes wrong in that front yard that's being hosted by that private citizen? Who should bear that liability, right? And, from my standpoint, I don't think the city should, right? So it's how do we make sure that we're comfortable with that liability should something unfortunate happen? It hasn't happened yet. These uses have been going on historically. We've had encroachments. We haven't been sued, as far as I know, since I've been here over something that's happened on the promenade related to a residence, a private residence. So, you know, I really think in writing this, the attempt was to be as accommodating as we could to the encroachments that exist and try to work with the homeowner and property owner to talk about what it is, acknowledge what it is through documentations and photos, and deal with this liability question as well as we work through that. So, you know, this was the first kind of step in that process of doing that. And really it was trying to get down onto a license agreement. You know, what are the main things that we see that the city needs, both for a documentation and a risk management standpoint, to allow this use of public land for a private purpose, which quite honestly is very, very unique. We see it in our public rights of way. Sometimes the commission will approve a permanent right-of-way obstruction. A little bit different here in that this is, you know, what we want to be parkland at the end of the day rather than a right-of-way. But trying to get to the same place of acknowledging, you know, not giving up the rights of the city. If there was some reason in the future that something needed to be removed or we needed it for something, that we still had that ability as the property owner to make that happen. So, you know, a lot there. It's a complicated. It's a unique project in that it's multiple different kinds of encroachments of different scales and type all along the promenade there. And how do we accommodate those in a way that is least disruptive, but allows us to get the protections we need in place as well as accomplish the goal of a charter park designation.
Mr. Conkle, may I add something to your report?
Absolutely.
I think, commissioners, the thing that we had given staff direction to is that we didn't really want to have a discussion about each of the individual properties, because that's something that staff is going to be working with them individually to customize this general template to each particular situation. So I respect the fact that people say that they want more time, but basically the meetings need to be set up and we need to give staff some direction to move forward with talking to each one of these people, because as Mr. Conkle stated, every situation is really different and unique. And so the document that we have before us is a general guideline and a template on how to approach it, but it's going to be customized for each particular property. Because again, as Mr. Conkle stated, no two situations are alike. I would like to see us move this forward so that staff can begin those conversations, because some of these things are going to be a little bit sensitive. And it's not about negotiating whether it's in or out. We've got the survey, we've got the documentation. So I think that needs to be shared with people. And I think there are some people along the promenade I know that have approached me when I've been out walking, and they know where their property line is, but yet there's still some issue with improvements or encroachments. So I think the staff just needs to get moving forward with this. And I know it's been a long time goal of Commissioner Smith and myself and the others that we recognize the McLaughlin Promenade for the gem that it is. So I just wanted to add the thing about the customization of each particular situation, and that this is just a general template that we ask staff to move forward with and put something together so that we could get started on this. So that's all I wanted to add to that. Mr. Mitchell, do you have comments?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'm point number 6, and you touched on it a little bit, Mr. Conkle. What is meant by property and use of the property and the encroachment area? I think that's probably the thing that we know the least about on this, because we don't know how insurance companies are going to react to this, and is going to affect the property owner's ability to get insurance.
Right.
So I guess I say I have no problem, and I think a delay is probably a good idea to get more answers. on that particular question. That was the one thing that really jumped out to me, was that insurance issue. And then just one point, I think on Exhibit A, the last line, the one before talks about encroachment property to be removed, required date of removal of encroachment. I think that's supposed to be removal of encroachment property.
Oh, okay, let's see. It says required date of removal of encroachment.
I think it should say encroachment property.
So that's like the fire pit
Right.
or the chair and table that needs to be moved out of the encroachment as part of the license.
Right, because the line before it lists the property that needs to be removed, so then the next one is the deadline for removing that property.
Okay, I see what you mean.
And
So
that will only be filled out where there are,
I can't hear Carrie.
Portable things that need to be removed. Yeah, so bottom line, I'm in favor of tabling this item until we can get questions on some of those.
But isn't each one of these going to be different for each particular person's insurance? It's not going to be one size fits all.
Well, that's true, but I think if we don't understand exactly what the insurance requirements are for any of them, how can we go forward with it?
Well, we have to talk to each particular person and understand what their insurance company is asking, because we don't know that without talking to them. We can't make a blanket statement without knowing, because if I have insurance company A and you have insurance company B, maybe their policies about that are completely different.
Well, okay, I'm going to have a motion to make once we hear from all the commissioners.
Yeah, I mean, I already called my insurance agent and asked him if I had this situation, what would be my policies situation, just because I wanted to know, and he's going to call me back tomorrow, so I won't actually know the answer just yet. Mr. Morrow?
Yeah, this is an issue that I've had problems and concerns with since the beginning because of how difficult it's going to be to execute this. Coming into this position and finding out just how much we as a body regulate private property has been something that's been an issue for me. But the other thing to note is that this isn't private property, this is public property. And so that's where I have such a hard time on this, is that after years of having established the thought that it is private property when in fact it is not, it's how do we balance all of those different situations, ones that are easier to remove and remediate and ones that are a lot more difficult to do so. And so with that being said, I think the mayor makes a good point. Looking at the staff report, it says a sample license agreement is provided below. I sympathize a lot with the emails that were sent to us about wanting to have time to go through things and talk about what the specifics might be. But in my mind, reading through this as a sample license agreement, it seems to me like that process would be after we were to approve and then allow our staff to go and have those conversations. I don't feel strongly either way about delaying or approving tonight, because either way our staff is going to have those conversations. It's just a matter of when we get it approved and recognizing, again, like the mayor said, that the license agreement below is not what is going to be executed and signed for each of the individual property owners, which again, I understand the concerns that were brought up, but recognizing that this is not the document that is going to be used is something that I think we ought to consider and just let staff do their work.
Mr. Smith?
Well, I'll sit right in the center of the fence, I guess, but, so this is something we've been working on 2 years, I don't know.
Longer.
A long time. And so I guess a little bit more of a delay doesn't bother me too much, but here's the plain and simple of it. We want that to be designated as a park. And I think that's something that is very important, whether that takes a little bit longer, as long as it's solidified as a park. there's no one, I think, on the commission that feels in any of our walks or any of our talks about this, about going in there and taking everything out. We have, seems to lean on the side of, you know, leaving what's there for the most part. That's even, you know, semi-questionable. And so we have kind of leaned towards that, grandfathered in the pieces that have been
Not the right
grandfathered
word,
in.
pre-existing.
Yeah. So I guess if I understood a little bit more why we're asking for the delay, I understand the questions about the insurance as a possible of that. I read the comments. Was there's something about the noticing of this that was late or something? That was one of the reasons that the citizens are asking for more time?
Yeah, I don't know, Mr. Wiley, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because we originally posted this agenda last Tuesday. We amended it on Monday with item 7A for the consent agenda, and then additional information for the SDC grant program. Those were the two things that were added after Tuesday. Now, it sounds like there may have been an issue whether it was showing up on the website with the link. Is that correct?
Yeah, so sometime between Tuesday and Monday, when I was contacted by Mr. Nacita, the link either disappeared from the website, and I don't
For the entire agenda, correct?
Just for the packet. The agenda itself is still displayed.
Posted, right.
So I'm not sure. I haven't been able to determine why that link disappeared. I did confirm that I got notification that the packet was published last Tuesday. But it's a mystery to me as to why the icon disappeared on the website. I don't have an explanation for it.
Yeah, I can say for a fact that when it was posted, I went on to not my city site, but my other computer, and I was able to access everything, and it was posted. But I guess what I would say is that I don't think that there was an error on our part with regard to that. And since this isn't a public hearing or anything, there wasn't any individual notice. But I would like to see us at least, if we delay this, I would like to see us move forward with the things that are simple, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, to get the things that we ask the staff to have them things moved off the promenade. That to me seems easy. We can do that. We should move forward with that. The trailers or the boats or whatever, those can move ahead, in my opinion, without any delay. We need to get on that anyway. But if we do need to delay, I don't have a problem with it. I still like to see staff move forward because there's going to be a lot of individual meetings.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to make a motion to delay but allow us to move forward with the simple encroachments that we know that are removable things, the trash cans, the boat trailers, that's easy.
Is the only public comment what we got in email, or is there are we taking any public comment?
We didn't receive any comment cards for this item at this time, but we did receive several emails that are attached to the packet.
Right. I mean, if we set it over to the next meeting, that's already basically bumping it, 2 meetings, essentially, because we're cutting meetings. I wouldn't go too much farther beyond that, unless there was a reason to, and I think we could probably start on some of the other work, but I'm open to that.
Would you make a motion to allow for staff to move forward with the simple removals?
Can I say something on that first?
Sure.
Then you're going to have, there still needs to be an agreement. Then you're going to have you could potentially have the insurance situation in particular spelled out in 2 different ways in 2 different agreements. And I don't want to go down that road. So, I mean, this has been going on how many years? Wow. So I'm going to make a motion to delay this to our next regular meeting, pending additional information on that liability and property insurance question.
So I'll second it as long as you exempt the things like the boat trailers and the physical improvements that we already identified.
Well, I'll second just as it is.
Can be removed.
It's been seconded.
There's no license agreement with that. Those things just have to go away.
The motion's been made and seconded.
Can I ask for a clarification on the motion? You said regular meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is July
It's not
9th,
regular.
which would be similar to this one where it's a special meeting. Our next regular meeting would be the 17th of July. I just wanted to clarify if you intended regular or special.
Either
July
one
9th.
will work. Yeah, whichever you'd like.
Can we handle whichever one is sooner?
So, yeah, let's continue, let's continue for clarity to July 9th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll amend the motion to read July 9th.
And I'll amend my second. And just as a matter of discussion, I will note that regardless of which path we go down, each individual agreement is going to be individualized to each of the properties. It's not as though if we were to go down a path right now that we're bifurcating the process. It's that each of them, by our direction, is that each of these is going to be property by property. So they're all individualized.
Well, Mr. Morrow, the things that need to be removed will not have a license agreement. Those are physical things like the boat trailer. That's not going to have a license agreement. They're just going to have to remove them.
I know,
That's
but
why I was
I'm talking
asking,
to
could
what
we take
Commissioner
that
Mitchell
out?
said earlier. I'm not talking about the removable portions.
I guess, so I guess there's a couple things. I think as much as we can get these similar is our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Realizing
do different.
a property may have two things happening at the same time.
Right.
One may be the parking area and ability to park cars is going to be acknowledged and allowed, right? The storage of a container on public property is going to be removed, all tied to the same property if that exists. So, and that's going to be documented as part of the agreement if we can get there, if that makes sense. So I guess,
Include that in the license agreement if they have a storage trailer that has to be removed?
well, we're trying to document the existing condition and what can stay and what can go. And I mean, that was how it was designed, was to say, you know, here's 10 things. These 8 can stay, these 2 got to go, right? Or whatever.
Okay, that was not my understanding.
Okay, I
I
apologize.
thought those would be separated out because they don't, everything doesn't apply to the same piece of property. That's how I read it.
We can.
I think it actually, the way it is written, which I think is well written, it does handle both of those situations. And the agreement, point 2, under the agreement section, talks about encroachment area, approved area and encroachment use that's going to be allowed. And then section 3 is setting aside section 2 is a requirement for property that has to be removed. So both situations, property that has to be removed and continued use of the encroachment area is covered.
Okay,
So
sorry,
this-
I didn't read it that way. I read it as those are basically code violations. They have to go. So call for the question.
All right. Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
and Mayor McGriff.
Aye.
Motion
So we'll
passes.
take this back up on our July 9th meeting and get some answers, at least from maybe several different insurance companies, private ones, because I don't know if our public one will be able to help us, so. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And I see Neely is online there. I guess let him into the meetings. Mr. Reed coming up.
Mayor and City Commissioners, thank you for having me, Kendall Reed, Parks and Recreation Director. Tonight, we're here requesting approval from the City Commission of our Parks Master Plan. The plan was initiated back in April of 2022. This plan outlines our strategic vision and plan for the next 10 to 20 years. We've had a robust public engagement process over these past 2 years. We just recently completed our joint work session with our city commission and PRAC last month. After that meeting, we had 2 additional meetings, one with CIC and also a meeting with our Youth Advisory Committee. We've continued our conversation with our SDC consultant around our capital improvement projects and are working or in the process of attaching SDCs to those projects. And we'll continue the conversation around the SDCs and the CIP plan with our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. And then we will be bringing that information back to our city commission. Tonight, we're asking for approval, so our next steps would be to adopt the Parks Master Plan into our comp plan. And tonight, we just want to open it up for questions. I'm here for questions. And we also have our consultant, Nilay Bhatt, from Next Practice Partners, available for any questions you might have.
Are there any questions of staff? Neely, did you want to add anything?
Just an acknowledgement of the time and the effort that's gone into this from the staff, from all of you and the community. That this is obviously a long process and multiple stages of input along the way to get to where we are. And as we've said all along, this is a living, breathing action plan. And so really your adoption of this plan in some ways will set a lot of the things in motion to explore with respect to site-specific work and really start putting the community's vision, values, and input into action. So just want to acknowledge all the efforts and also just our gratitude for the opportunity to be a partner with the city.
Any comments or questions, commissioners?
One.
Let's go right ahead.
Super specific. Page 50 under historical preservation. Says and as we've seen in some of our surveys, that historic preservation has actually come up pretty high in the parks surveys, which I'm happy about. Stakeholders would like to see a focus on historical preservation and acknowledgement. Specific priorities were a memorial for the Cayuse 5, restoring the end of the Oregon Trail, and a better defined purpose and usage for the Ermatinger House. I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
And it implies that there isn't a defined purpose, and it implies that the current uses may change. It's saying that came from stakeholders. I'd like to know where that came from and how that sentence got placed in there.
So this, as you know, we had over 750 interactions across the process, and we're not editorializing or editing or wordsmithing anything people have said. The stakeholder input is captured the way it was shared with us as well, which is why the statistically valid survey and some of the other mechanisms were used to give you a more clearer sense of priorities. The historic preservation is certainly a high priority and in keeping with the values of the community, but specific to Ermatinger House, that sentence is one person's opinion / input at one point in time in one meeting, not reflective of the entire community's input or even a recommendation from any standpoint. We're just not editing out anything the community has said, which is why we've captured the information here.
Well,
that's kind of how I took it, Rocky.
Yeah, well, if you play back the statement that you just said a minute ago, this plan sets in motion very specific things and moving forward, and that implies that a sentence like that would do that. Therefore, 5 years from now, if someone reads this and says, well, wait a minute, in 2003, there was some mention here that there should be a better defined purpose and use of the Ermatinger House, and if we find out that was one person said that, then that wording should be changed. Because we know that the other references in here are from true stakeholders and for people that is broader than one or two people. So I think that statement needs to be a little bit broader, unless you can show me exactly where someone said there needs to be better defined purpose and use for the Ermitinger House and who that was. Because right now it says stakeholders, which implies more than one. So if you can show me, otherwise it's a no vote for the whole plan for me.
Mr. Conkle, can you clarify how or in the plan, those comments are not binding us to anything is how I see them.
Doesn't matter.
They're just merely comments, and it's in the appendix. It's an appendix document, in my opinion. This is what people said at that point in time, but I don't see it as a policy statement.
That's in the core body of the document. It's not general like the other
I'm asking Mr. Conkle, from a planning standpoint, if what you're saying, I understand why you're saying it, but I don't see it as being as a sentence that's going to bind us to anything, because it's merely indicating
none
this
of
is
it's
what
binding.
public members or a public member said.
The entire document's not binding. We can change it anytime, so that doesn't matter to me.
So I just wonder if we could clarify that. Is there a way to clarify those comments? That whole section is basically talking about, this is what people said. It's not making policy, it's not making, it's not saying that you shall do X.
I guess.
Correct, and at the start of the very section, if you read, it simply says stakeholders shared their priorities to enhance the Parks and Rec system, and looks at a variety of different things. And as you look at it as well, the very next section talks about public input meetings, then the live polling and the survey. So across the plan process, at all times, the focus and the thought has always been that there isn't one single mechanism that drives it. And if anything, it's the statistically valid survey that, as we've told you all along, is the most representative input of the community at large, users, non-users, and your demographics as a whole. So that's really what we're basing the priorities and the recommendations on more than anything else. All the other input has helped inform the kind of questions. So because we heard a lot about, let's say, historic preservation and the stakeholder input, we asked that as one of the key choices in the statistically valid survey. And that's where you see it in the high priority for investment as an overarching area. A system-wide master plan does not prescribe site-specific recommendations. It is meant to be a system-wide plan. If you are to do anything on Ermitinger, the obvious implementation step would be to do a plan for that specific site, just like we recommended for EOT or the pool or the cemetery. So that's really how any system-wide master plan looks at it. If this were a plan just for Ermitinger House and this input came about, then I would say you have to look into it more specifically. This is not an Ermitinger master plan. This is a City of Oregon City Parks.
It's also not an End of the Oregon Trail master plan. It's also not a Cayuse Memorial plan. Those statements are stakeholders. We've heard comments that support that. We have not heard anyone, including staff, that has questioned the purpose or the usage of the current Ermitinger House. In fact, the staff report of the last time about the Ermitinger House was that it's never seen any more use than it does today, and the programming there is working substantially well and all of this. So that line is not connected to anything that we know of.
This is making Ermitinger seem less important?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I would push back a bit, though, because again, if you look at the priority investment ratings that come from the statistically valid survey, it doesn't agree with that.
Well, then why would that sentence be there? Why wouldn't that sentence just say a general support for historic preservation, including these things? But why does it specifically say a better defined purpose and usage? That's very specific. And as you said, this is not an Ermitinger House plan. So why is it that specific to question the use?
Correct. Do you want me to edit out the comments from your constituents?
Absolutely. Well, no. If you can show me, if you can show me where that came from, and if it's one person, then I don't believe stakeholders is right. You can say one stakeholder mentioned this. I know that the other ones have support and have been discussed. I've not seen anything else come to that specific. You don't have to keep answering or trying to answer if that's the answer I'm going to keep getting.
council.
Can I provide a little context is probably why that statement was mentioned. I think we're in a much better place than when we started with the Ermitinger House, and we have a clear vision moving forward with the programming, with the work that we're doing with the Friends Group. And so Ermitinger House is thriving as of now. But when we started, it took some time to kind of ramp up to that and to work out a programming plan for the Ermitinger House and build better relationships. So since this plan is over the course of 2 years, like Nile said, at that point in time, I'm sure there were feelings about the Ermitinger House and where we were at the time, where we didn't have this programming in place and this relationship that we have currently. And so that's probably where that comment came from.
And that's a valid answer, and I appreciate that. But to also add to it, and as much as and the other thing where it's so specific as the restoring of the end of the Oregon Trail, that is got a whole separate process. And so calling out that stakeholders want to restore it when we haven't even had that conversation is very specific too. And if anyone reads this, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. When we go through that public process, people are going to say, wait, the Parks and Rec plan says their stakeholders said we need to restore it. I think that's super specific. And by us approving it, says we approve those statements. I don't approve them because I think they're too specific.
I appreciate where Kendall's coming from. 'Cause I mean, one of the comments, at the top of that page, Friends of Ermitinger House are concerned with being treated as though they're renting space, not bringing people into the house. Like, I think that's reflective of what Mr. Reed is saying. I think that perception has hopefully changed with our relationship with.
Well, according to their own report, it changed.
That's what I mean. So, I think this has been a multi-year process. And when we started this, we were at a very different place on some of these facilities, I think, than when we are today. We hadn't done the facilities plan for the end of the Oregon Trail, right? And knowing some of the issues that are there, right? I mean, I understand what you're saying.
But I'm not sure why we would not make the document reflect that.
Well, we're reflecting the comments that we got when we did it, because it was such an iterative process to get from, give us all of your comments through all this stakeholder involvement to then refine that down to a document with a recommendation, right? We didn't do the statistical survey, last month. This was some of the stuff we did at the very beginning that drove this process. And so I think that's being reflective in some of these comments is that, over that time period, things have changed.
I'm not arguing that it hasn't.
But I don't know what we do with those comments then.
Well, we maybe need to add something.
We're voting on it tonight. We can vote no and say fix it. I mean, it's as easy as that.
We add something that refers to what has already been accomplished toward what was mentioned in the comment. Just a thought.
So if you look at the start of section 3.1, page 47, it mentions this input was specifically from June 1st, 2nd, 2022. So over 2 years ago, at that point in time, that's how people felt. Again, as we've said, right, this is along the course of all that has happened as well. So the eventual recommendations don't reference specifically fixing Ermitinger House or doing away with it in any way, shape, or form. This is simply reflecting what somebody said then. If you go back over a 3-year plan to keep updating what has happened to public input, you will probably never finish a plan because you all are always implementing new things. So this, as any master plan and a couple hundred of these that I've done, we've always reflected this for what it is at a point in time as what people felt. Just like the master plans I finished in June 2020 still reflected incredible optimism in people's minds in December 2019 and Jan 2020. I didn't remove those comments out because the whole world changed in March 2020. we still had to keep them. And that's why the living, breathing master plan helps, because in June 2020, all the recommendations or the things that the public wanted in December 2019 and Jan 2020 were just not realistic thing because times have changed. I think this is the same reflection of anything. It shows that you all have not waited for the plan to be done to start implementing to make things better, that even in the course of the plan itself, you've already enhanced and elevated things to make it better compared to what people felt in June 2022 versus what people are feeling today in June 2024.
Well, I'm voting on it in 2024. And
well, is there a way to put
many times have
asterisk or a postscript to clarify that these are comments individually and that they are not policy statements of any sort?
Oh, I think at the very introduction, we can say that very clearly. So if that, just in terms of context, right, we could put that at the start of that section. That way, it's not just for that comment. I think for any comment in there, people recognize the context of how this came about. If that helps, that's an easy tweak. We can.
I think that would be very appropriate. I don't want anybody to misconstrue and have the same concern that Commissioner Smith does. And again, if it's clarified that it's a comment only, not a policy statement, not an implementation statement, then I think we can move forward with it.
100%, and we can do it at the start of the section itself. So that's an easy tweak.
I think on page is that 47 right at the top?
Exactly, right at the start of section 3.1 at the intro is where we would put that. So even before you read any of the section's comments, I think that context might be helpful for them.
Yeah, I think it would dovetail nice.
Rocky?
I'll probably still vote no, but yes, that would be great.
Okay, so let's do that. Comments?
I think I would support doing that, and I think that also helps with other things in that same section that I don't think necessarily. It talks about the Buena Vista Clubhouse, for example. Yeah. That's also a thing where I don't know that we necessarily have agreement even on this commission about what we'd like to do. That's still something that I'd like to see how we can figure out the best and highest use of that property. So I think adding in that clarification would be nice. But barring that, that's fine with me.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, are you okay with that addition?
Yes. But that's not the only comment I have.
Okay.
Adam, do you want to have other things you want to?
Is there a motion? Or do you still have a comment?
Mayor, I have other.
Yes, go ahead.
I have other topics.
Go ahead.
Okay. Page 12, big moves. Number 1 says explore earned income opportunities to enhance funding of the department. And then it lists park utility fees, review fees and charges, grants, advertising. And then it says initiate a bond or levy campaign. We're not there yet.
No, we're not.
It should just list bond or levy campaign
options
as one of the options to be considered. So eliminate the words initiate. Okay. On that same page, number 5 says master business plan into the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center and Mountain View Cemetery. And that same comment's made on page 13. But I think we need to include the pool and a potential rec center as another big move master plan. Because those are the 3 that we've been talking about. Okay?
Right.
I think that needs to be added.
Well, that would align with the facilities plan.
Yes. So we need to add pool and potential rec center there.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'm going to try to, I'm not going to drive us in the weeds on language, except I just could not ignore this statement. Page 14, demographics and trends, population. City's population has grown significantly over the past 12 years, and this rate of growth is expected to continue, albeit at a slower rate over the next 15 years. That makes no sense.
That cancels each other out.
See, it should say, and growth is projected to continue, albeit at a slower rate. Because the rate of growth is not going to continue. Okay,
that's a minor amendment. That was the
easy stuff.
I'm doing these as you speak, so go on. This is great. Thank you.
Okay. On page 69, there's a chart of recommended, and I'm trying to scroll through it, it's hard to do. Of recommended acreage by park type and what we have by park type. And I'm going to get to a point, trust me. On regional parks, we are way over the recommendation. On most of the rest, on neighborhood parks, we're under. On most of the rest, we're just kind of barely at the standard. And I suspect that the regional park, the huge acreage on regional parks is Newell Creek Canyon, right?
Nope.
No, our regional park is Clackamas Park.
Clackamas.
Yeah, Newell Creek Canyon's Metro.
So it's not included in because it is included in the big circle on one of the graphs.
Because it's shown as an additional regional park within our area. Because remember when...
It's not ours.
But it's not, it doesn't belong to us.
I understand it's not ours, but I thought it was included in available park space.
Well, when we did the maps, we showed all of the amenities in regards to like the parks, different types of regional parks, even if they didn't belong to us. So we could clearly reflect the levels of service, the level of amenities, whether they belong to us or not. Okay. So we have one regional park.
Okay. That's fine. My real problem is on page 139, the capital improvement plan chart. And I'm looking for the little jump to page on this document that I've got open, and I can't find it, so I can't get there. What I don't see on there is money for land acquisition. And the real reason I bring it up, and I said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it until it turns up in this document. Nowhere in here do I see a recognition of how underserved certain areas of our city are, and the need for acquisition of parkland, especially in those areas.
Park Place.
Specifically, Park Place and the neighborhood that I live in, which is Caulfield, or east of Highway 213. Somewhere in this document, and I know there's all these, you have all the showing different kinds of parks, but if you just take a map and put a pin in every park, regardless of whether it's a neighborhood park or a pocket park or a regional park or whatever, a park, there are glaring, those two neighborhoods in particular are glaringly underserved, and that's not reflected in here as one of the priorities that we need to make, particularly when it comes to acquiring parkland. And I can't, I'll be honest, I can't support this plan until I see that in here.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
So originally, we highlighted that there's a need for 29 acres of land acquisition for additional parks. And so what we've been doing is, in working with our STC consultant, is being specific, utilizing the equity maps to highlight those areas where we don't have parks. Caulfield neighborhood is one, Park Place is another. So what you'll see there is, you'll see the Thimble Creek development, which there's dedicated land, parkland associated with that development. That's why we attached it to the CIP plan. So that equates, I think there's 10 acres there, which then reduces that 29 acres. The other one is the Park Place development. There's 4.4 acres that are supposed to be dedicated parkland for that development, which ties to the Park Place area where we need to add additional parks. And then there's two other areas there. I don't have the
Myers and Partlow.
Yes, that ties to areas where we need to also expand our trails and our parks based on our equity maps, which accounts for those 29 acres. But it's a smart way to account for those 29 acres because now you're working with a developer where you can look to get this dedicated land, get this park land, hopefully at a much cheaper rate, and get that parkland that you're referring to. So it is highlighted on there, and we called it out with those specific areas and those specific developments to show, hey, this is the property that we're going after in order to meet that need with the equity maps.
Do you see that in the, on page, let's see, try and get to the bottom here.
Plus, there's two developments coming up in the Park Place area, and the county, you guys heard a review of their master plan,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be some park dedication up in there as well.
So Commissioner Mitchell, are you on page 139?
I'm trying to
Get there? Is there a way you can bring that up, please?
Oh, here. Is there a jump to? Where am I not seeing it? So here I am wearing the big dunce cap, not being able to figure out the...
Nobody has a dunce cap.
Okay, well, I guess what confused me on that is the subtotal underneath it says trails.
But then,
Trailheads and connections.
Oh, okay, so let's say
I
we
thought
go,
we were talking about,
we go
I thought it was talking about trails in those areas.
Oh, it's under the total new park development, and then it says trails, and then it says additional trails, 3 miles, then it says Park Place, type of park, neighborhood, land acquisition cost, 5.2 million, development cost, just under 2.7, total cost, just under 8, so 7.8, acres, 8. Then the one under that would be Thimble Creek.
I see them now. What threw me off was the subtotal says trails.
Gotcha.
And
yeah.
Trailheads.
As a, yeah,
so
it
I
got
thought
put
we were
in
talking
new
about
park
putting
development.
I thought we were putting trails in those areas, not.
Yeah.
No parks.
Yeah. I'm not thrilled with that. I still don't. I would just love to see it spelled out that we recognize underserved areas. Because who knows that those two developments are ever going to happen? We've got 30 whatever property owners in the Thimble Creek concept plan area. How are you going to wrestle those cats all into one direction? That may not ever happen. And I don't think that lets us off the hook for trying to get additional parkland in that area. So I would just like to see it spelled out somewhere in here that we recognize that there are disparities in our disbursement of parks and a need for additional parkland in those two particular areas.
To that point, if I may, because it's on the same matter, if you have something else, just real quick.
I'm done.
To that point, and this may be a question for the city manager or Ms. Richter, Kendall was talking about the new development opportunities for parks, and given that not only we don't know the timeline for those, but also that there are so many new rules about what we can and cannot require as clear and objective. Is that something that we would even be able to count on as something required of a developer? Because it definitely seems as though the priority of the legislature and the governor is to just pave over it all.
That's a great point.
I think, and you can, I mean, I'll give you my impression is that I think that we have to be more aggressive in our acquisition of land. Preferably that's through development agreements, because we're not going to be able to rely on master planning anymore. That's going to be able to exact large properties, you know, and that's going to be through, part of that's a negotiation, whether that's system development charge, reimbursements for the dedication of the land. But, you know, we're going to have to look at being more aggressive to get these properties, because there's no way we're going to exact them out of most of these developments anymore, is my opinion. Now, there will be developers that come in that want to work with us because they want to do larger developments, you know, that, you know, I think everybody realizes the benefits of parks, but, you know, it's going to be different than what we've been doing since 1972 or one, or whatever it was. Yeah.
71.
So, but that doesn't mean I don't think that we don't put money away to be able to do that, right? We're going to need those funds one way or the other, whether it's to purchase through a willing sellers program, whether it's to use for SDC credit in some type of a negotiation, some type of a developer's agreement associated with a development to get the property that we need, or condemnation.
Right, and that's my point. So, thank you, I appreciate that.
I don't know if you got anything to add to that.
Great.
Yeah.
Would you like an additional sentence in there about that particular statement?
I think it's.
Are you asking me that?
I think it's an easy addition. It's not changing the scope of the document. You're merely calling out that we recognize that there are underserved areas of Oregon City.
Yeah, as I said, I'd like to see that added.
Can we do that?
Yes, and I would, similar to the other, do that, and I'm doing it right now at the start of section 4.2, where it shows all the equity maps, to make a note of that specifically.
Okay, that'd be great. Anything else? We've got 2 recommendations for additions to the document that are clarifying and emphasizing. Do we have a motion to add those 2 items to the master plan?
4. That one went away. Park. I guess if what I heard was in the beginning of section 3.1, add that
Yes.
this is not a policy statement. These were comments that were received through the public engagement process or something similar to that.
Yes.
Page 12, there was adding the pool and the potential rec center as something that we would,
Yes.
that we'd look.
And eliminate the word initiate.
Yep, okay, that was the 5th one. Eliminate the word initiate, that process.
Yes.
There was on page 14, that it was about the population growth, not the rate, I believe, if I caught that one correctly.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then the last one that we just mentioned about adding to the equity section of 4.2 about the underserved areas of Caulfield Neighborhood Association and Park Place. That kind of would have caught.
While I have you, could I read out just the text of those 2 sentences just to be sure the verbiage matches your expectation?
Sure, please do.
For 3.1, after the intro paragraph, I'd make a note before the stakeholder and user groups are identified. And the sentence is, it is important to note, these are comments from individual stakeholders and not policy recommendations.
Okay. 4.2, yes.
Right, so then, so for 4.2, again, at the start of that, prior to showing the equity maps, when I have the description as well, the added line I have mentioned here, in the 4th paragraph, which talks about, conversely, in high-density areas, smaller circles are drawn, showing a smaller geographical area sufficient to serve more people and meet the set standard. I've added a line that says, these help identify that there are gaps and underserved areas in Oregon City as it pertains to neighborhood park land and certain amenities.
I think he wanted it specifically called out Caulfield and Park Place, such as the Caulfield and Park Place neighborhoods. Does that work, Neely?
Absolutely, Mayor. That's what I'm just adding right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it reads, just as a final thing, these help identify that there are gaps in underserved areas such as Park Place and Caulfield in Oregon City as it pertains to neighborhood parkland and certain amenities.
I'm seeing nodding heads, yes.
That works for me.
Okay. All right, let's have a motion to approve subject to these amendments, the 4 that we had as outlined by Mr. Conkle and Neely.
Before I make a motion, I just wanted to thank Neely for his work on this. I've really enjoyed getting to know him and see him in our meetings. I especially appreciate his willingness to come to our Youth Advisory Commission meetings and just seeing him as he's been involved in this project for quite a while now. I've really enjoyed that. And so we appreciate your work, Neely. And with that, I will move to approve the Parks Master Plan as amended.
Second.
Commissioner Smith?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lee. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Marl?
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
Mayor McGriff?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And before you go, Neely, I also want to add, I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Reed for the perseverance, and I think that we had an exceptional amount of meetings to involve the public, and I know that there'll still be ongoing discussions with public members regarding the process. And thank you, Neely, for attending. I watched the meeting for the Youth Advisory Commission. I couldn't be there, but I watched it when I came home, and I'm glad that the student asked lots of questions, which is good. And they had some very helpful comments. And so again, thank you for all your work, and we'll look forward to moving this forward. And I'm particularly interested in making sure we move forward with the alternative funding for this particular program and project.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to our, almost to the end, City Manager, City Commission 2021-23 and 23-25 goals update.
Thank you, Mayor. So we did provide you the quarterly update on the status of the Commission's goals and the projects that we've been working on. Hopefully you had a chance to read that. I'll just hit a couple of the highlights that you know, I think are important for you to know. Concerning the DEI work that we're doing, we had a really great work session with all our directors and managers on a DEI training component. It was about a 4-hour training that took place for all those managers and moving that forward. We've also have put together our internal DEI task force made up of staff members from every department, as well as multiple, whether it be union, management, a combination of job classifications in that. And then we're working on filling the community DEI task force as well and getting that moving forward. So that's beginning to move. Not too sure, I might be the only one really excited about this, but for IT, I might be down to carrying one swipe card for our facilities. It will also include an identification component to the swipe card itself. So we'll be moving to an identification type badge, which we have historically not had in Oregon City. So by being able to get to the one swipe card, essentially we're finally consolidating the access security of all of our facilities to one company rather than kind of the mismatch that we have right now. So nearing completion on that project.
We're not talking about eyeball scanners, are we?
I missed that.
Eyeball scanners.
Oh.
Eyeball scanners, no.
Not yet. Yeah, tourism, working through creation of approval of the Destination Marketing Organization contract, so we'll be getting that project moving forward here shortly. And then we talked a little bit about the Commission did approve the Facilities Master Plan, so that's a completed project that was actually from the previous biennium, as well as we talked about the last meeting, really that great ceremony and dedication of the Cayuse 5 Memorial. So those have been some of the, I think, the highlights as it pertains to completing some of the Commission goals. So I'll end there. If you have any specific questions, be glad to answer them.
I actually do, but commissioners, if you have some first, go right ahead.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I had a question on the update from Chief Davis. So we didn't particularly get the grant that we wanted. Is there an option for us to try again for the I'm talking about the how-to. And we said that we did not get that. The third bullet.
Oh, so this is, I think we need to update that a little bit. So we were able to do some work where we applied for the 2 grants through through the county for the housing services grant. So one component of that was an expansion of additional assistance for the police side on case manager / peer support that we're going to be negotiating with the county to create that IGA. Hopefully in July, August, we'll have that complete, which will allow us to have some additional funding to bring forth resources to help with our behavioral health unit component in our police department. And then that went along with the grant that we received to create the community court as well. So we received 2 separate grants. So that was from June of 23, that how-to grant. So I think that's been supplemented with the initiatives through the SHS funding. Or is that right?
Okay, and then unfortunately, because there aren't page numbers on here, I'm going to the one that says Economic Development, Goal 2, Strategy 2.6. So I assume that we are done with the broadband study, and I was wondering when it's coming up on our radar and where we're moving on with that.
That one is, the consultant work's done. We need to finish up the internal review and recommendation from it. So that's one that continues to kind of get pushed down. That's what I was wondering.
Yep.
So we can try and find time to get that onto a work session to have that discussion.
At least preliminarily, that I know it's something that was one of our goals. And let's see, then I also was really happy to see all the stuff that's on the IT list. So I do hope that we can add, I brought up again that our form that we have for filling out to be on boards and commissions is still not right. It allows for different fonts to go all over the place when you're trying to fill in the form, and it just needs to be something that you can type into. Maybe it needs to be revised, but I saw that again when we had people applying for Metro Enhancement. It's a mess still. But other than that, I thought those were all good. And those are the only 2 questions I had about that particular update.
All right, great, thank you.
I appreciate the fact that things are moving along. I particularly like the chart, because it kind of gives you a quick visual on where it is. So thank you for a very thorough update. So commissioners, any updates?
No. Can we just take a break before getting back to the work session?
Yeah, we still have 2 more things on this agenda, and then we can take a break. So does anybody have any updates, any prognostications for the C4 workshop or the retreat that you're going to?
Well, I was going to address that during the work session under committee reports.
2 of us really need a break.
Okay. All right, well, I need to add one thing under the regular commission agenda. So Commissioner West is going to be taking a medical leave from the Planning Commission for a few months, and just wanted to make sure you were all aware of that. And we will send her our good wishes at this particular time. And with that, so we'll adjourn the meeting, and then how long of a break would you like?
We'll need at least 5 minutes to transition over.
Okay, well, let's take 10 minutes, and then we'll transition over back to the work session. So this meeting is adjourned.